Loud, audible exhale. Last breath, biggest breath of the day. Deep inhale, loud, audible exhale. Can let the breath return to normal. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Welcome back. Whew. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's do it, dude. Let's do it. Wow. Oh, that's the good stuff, baby.
That is the good stuff. Feels good.
Yeah.
Still like tingly from the ice bath too.
Yeah. Yeah. But breath of fire. Need a little bit more fire next time, maybe.
I don't normally do the breath of fire.
Yeah. It's a good one for up regulating, kind of getting some energy in.
Whew. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Oh, man. So I was just telling you, I didn't even really write anything in here, which is a compliment.
I love it, dude. We're flowing. We're flowing. Just living intuitively.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful day. Did some sled pulls. We did some ice. Still warming up. And yeah, lucky number 13 on April Fool's Day, my friend. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh man.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to have you on, and I'm happy to just have a deeper conversation. I think it's really cool to have Squatch leaders, different leaders here in Austin, friends that I'm meeting, to jump on and to be able to just like connect through this conversation, this intentional conversation. And I was trying to think when we first met, and I'm pretty sure it was Mona's first spiritual night.
Oh.
I thought it was Metaman.
I thought it was too. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was her first spiritual night.
I think you're right.
And yeah, that was the first time we met, and I think we just connected because we're both into Bitcoin. And yeah, and then we had conversations at MetaMen, which I'll be going to the next one, which is I think this month, towards the end of this month.
Amazing.
Yeah,
dude. That first conversation we had there was very special.
Yeah, and often I think I was talking about starting this thing, getting this podcast going, and here we are, baby.
Yeah, dude. It's become quite an achievement. It's been really impressive to watch and see all of the you take this from just some concept and talk and make it into reality and into something that you've had some amazing guests on, amazing people sharing their stories, being vulnerable. It's been really, really cool.
Yeah.
To see.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's been a journey for sure. I love doing this. I love the passion project that I've been doing. And yeah, man. So I'm happy to have you on, and I think we could start off just by getting into when you moved here and what kind of drove you to move to Austin, and then we can kind of dive into the more interesting stuff.
Oh yeah.
You just got back from Costa Rica, Central America.
My mind is still there, so my body is here, but my mind is still there. Yeah, man. So I came to Austin in 2019. So just before all the pandemic, just before it got cool, before it was really on the map. And I'd been living in New York for about 7 or 8 years before. And I was kind of a series of like New York cliches, I would say. I worked on Wall Street and I was in like the finance bro world. And that was fine, but I didn't really love it. And then I kind of got into tech shortly thereafter, co-founded a company and was kind of in like the New York tech sphere. And, I think I just was at a point in my life in 2019 where I was starting to not really value a lot of the stuff that New York gave and crave some stuff that it didn't give. So bars in New York are open till 4 a.m. and I was kind of coming out of my party phase and drinking less. And I'm sure we'll talk about a whole alcohol journey at some point. But and just like the incredible food and culture and museums, it stopped resonating with me as much. And then you see kind of like the hassle factor of New York of taking the subway 25 minutes to get anywhere, and the weather sucks. I mean, I remember distinctly when when New York broke me. Like I remember the moment. It was in April of 2019 and there was like a snowstorm. And it's like, everywhere, many other places in the country, it's beautiful and 70 degrees. In New York, it's like I'm taking a 40-minute subway ride to get to work. It's delayed. It's snowing. I'm miserable. And, the other thing in New York that I don't think I was very aware of at the time, but I just kind of knew, was that it has a very, there's like an ambient anxiety in the air there all the time. People are grinding, hustling, very much.
It's so busy.
It's a rat race. I mean, it really is a rat race. And I think there was a time earlier in my life when that served me, and it kind of stopped at a certain point. And Austin was, there was the company that I co-founded. We moved everyone here in 2019, but also it was a great opportunity for me to try something different.
What was the name of the company?
Company was Live Oak. We were a video conferencing tool for financial services companies to use, and we got into the video conferencing game in 2015. So before Zoom, as crazy as that sounds to say, nobody used Zoom. People used WebEx at that time. And we were early, lucky, all of those things.
Interesting. And so that must have took off during COVID.
Yes. COVID was interesting to me because it was like the world was kind of, obviously, there was a lot of unrest and uncertainty and fear and, death, and destruction economically and also just, literally.
Yeah.
But it was a good time to be in the video conferencing industry, ironically enough. And we actually ended up selling the company during the beginning of the pandemic to DocuSign. So, I
think you told me that.
So I just finished my stint there.
I've been to New York a couple of times. Went for both were to see Robert Glasper live. I think that was the 2 times I went. So it was like a really nice, chill music, live concert. Also Tom Misch as well. So I've been, I think 3 or 4 times. I actually thought about moving there with a buddy of mine, and I'm really glad I didn't move to New York. It's just, it's not built into my personality. And, there's just the hustle and bustle for sure. There's definitely the grind. New York is a beautiful city, but I think it's definitely changed since COVID, like drastically from what I've heard.
Yep.
So wanting to move to experience a more relaxing environment. I mean, Austin is just, I mean, it's a city, right? It's a city, but it's a smaller population. There's, you know, it's not as civilization and the industrialization of the city is not even merely close to New York. And then there's this different culture. I mean, it's got health and fitness and this more spiritual conscious, you know, just being more conscious. And so that's awesome that you decided. So around 2019 to come here. Mm-hmm. So you've been here for almost 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's been amazing. And I think, to your point, the people are what really makes the city special. It's been really cool to see various friends and acquaintances kind of move here over time. It really became like a bit of a shelling point, I would say, to use a Bitcoin term, during the pandemic, of people that were in New York or LA or San Francisco or whatever that wanted to stay in the US, but wanted a city that, you know, was a little bit more just kind of open to free thinking and free, more kind of like a live and let live, I think, vibe than what a lot of the other cities offered. And so, yeah.
And there's, you know, I've heard a lot of people from California and New York moving here because of the COVID lockdowns and just different ways in which local governments handled it. Right. And so after a certain point, I mean, I was 26, 27. I was like, all right, I'm ready for a change. Massachusetts has just been like, let's lock down, let's mandate, let's do all this stuff. And I was like, nope, I'm going to move to Texas or Florida. I was actually thinking Miami. I told my parents, I remember I told a few family members, and they were like, Austin is definitely more your vibe.
Yeah.
And they were, I think, definitely accurate, and it feels pretty right. I've been to Miami for the Bitcoin conference in 2021 and 2022. And though I loved both conferences and the time that I had there, I got a taste of the city of Miami, and I was like,
it's always fascinating to me, like what different, how different cities you can spend just a few days in them and you really understand what they value, you know, like LA obviously is like Hollywood, SF, tech stuff. New York is like finance, fashion, culture, food. Miami, there's just a lot of, from the time that I've spent there, there's a lot more like conspicuous consumption. Like, you know, everyone's like driving super nice cars and jewelry and South Beach and this and that and the houses. And I feel like Austin is just like a bit more understated than that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems it's changing more and more. And I don't even really go in the city that much, to be honest. I go there for our office with Unchained is there, but I'm not really in the city as much as I was about to say as much as I'd like to, but I think I actually like not being in the city and just kind of be on the outskirts, you know? So,
well, I said, so I just got back from being in Costa Rica for some time, and people have been asking me about it. And what I've said is that for a U.S. city, Austin is as good as it gets for me. But I'm not sure I want to be in the U.S. I'm not sure I want to be in the city.
Yeah. And this question has popped in my mind, and we'll definitely get into that. But so you moved to Austin. You were working for a different company
for the startup. Yeah. Startup and then DocuSign.
Yeah. How was your experience with that startup?
I mean, it was, seeing a company and being a part of it, going from, you know, no revenue to millions in revenue, from, you know, no employees to 30.
Yeah.
It was a really cool and, really, really formative time in my life. I think that, you know, there's just something very like exhilarating about working on something where where like the risk of failure is there. And I think it's almost like iron sharpens iron. Like you're forced to kind of respond and like bring your A game, you know, when the company's failure is on the line. But also I think I had a lot of my identity wrapped up in it. I was very much, you know, I went from being like the finance guy, and that was how I identified, to the startup guy, the startup founder, you know. And I think that there's, it just was kind of like the next in a series of points in my journey where like, it was just very clear that that was really like how I interfaced with the world. And you know, I wrapped up, I was very much, you know, married to the game, if you will, to the startup game. And it was exhilarating, but it also, I think, was kind of all consuming.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that really, resonated with me there. So I work for a startup now. It's the first startup that I've worked for. And I love the fact that the stage that we're in right now is we're building, we're trying to monetize. We're trying to become a more profitable company. We're trying to build out our company. And so to be able to see this challenging moment of like, you know, we're a Bitcoin native financial services company in the midst of a very skeptical and uneasy macro landscape, you know, and especially coming back from my Costa Rica retreat with ayahuasca and finding out that all these banks are crashing.
So you were
I was
off the grid when all that was going down?
That I was in ceremony. When
that's amazing.
So it was Silicon Valley Bank that started this,
and Silvergate,
this kind of cascade of instability. And so I mean, I came back and I was like trying not to be on social media at all, but like I had to go on Slack and for work. And so there's links to social media through Slack. Yeah. And then I'm just seeing,
you can't escape it.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm seeing all this stuff, and I mean, like everybody was going crazy, like in a good way. It's like, you know, this sounds kind of bad, but like when the legacy financial system is unstable, it does give reverence, and it shines a light on Bitcoin more. 100%. You know, and
I can't think of a better advertisement for Bitcoin than
and what Unchained offers as a service is like the antidote to what's happening, right? And so it's a great it's just an opportunity for us to try to shine a light on our services. And but anyways, just to kind of turn back to your comments, like it's really cool to see like we're still developing this way of trying to build. Like we know as a company, and the people that I work with, we all know like this is a company that's going to really, I think in the long term, be very successful and present a lot of value for individuals, businesses, institutions, and whatnot. It's just hard though. We're still trying to figure it out. And so it's cool to see that, to be in the stage where the revenue, you know, we're a small team. When I started, I think it was like Unchained was like 40 something people. We're at like 80 something right now. And I have a lot of confidence. And I think that we're going to grow to a point where it's going to be hundreds or even thousands of employees. Yeah.
I think they say every time your company doubles, it's like a totally different company. So like 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 80, totally different company. Yeah. So the place you're working now is totally different from when you started.
Yeah. And like you do have a more, your responsibility is much more, that you can see the effects of your responsibilities and your actions and what you're doing. There's just a smaller team and like what you're doing and the actions that you're facilitating. So it's cool though. I love that, you know, you're not just another number at like, I was working previously at Charles Schwab, you know, and that's a huge financial corporation.
Yeah.
So it's like, you do have this special feeling of being,
you've impact.
Yeah.
You've impact.
Yeah. And so, when I first started though, too, to reflect on another comment that you had, Bitcoin was a big part of my identity. And it's because of the timing. And I actually wrote a Substack article on this, just the timing of finding Bitcoin during COVID and the lockdowns and like kind of the social chaos. And I was trying to find a solution for all of it. I was just
Bitcoin fixes this.
That's the ethos, man. And I would tell my friends that. They'd be like, shut the fuck up. Like, what do you mean Bitcoin fixes COVID and fixes like unhealthiness or all these different random subjects? I was like, listen, man, it's all the money system. But so yeah, I did actually also tie Bitcoin to my identity as well, because I was so flabbergasted by just understanding the technology and then understanding the repercussions it's going to have on the symbiotic relationship between humanity. It's fascinating to see these reverberating ripple effects of our money system being a technology that helps with peaceful interaction with human beings and, you know, intersubjective value, you know? And so when the money system's been corrupted for so long, you see this kind of madness. And I mean, you know, some people might put their tinfoil hat on, but I think that the way that COVID, at least the response to COVID, definitely, my intuition was like, something's really wrong here. Something's really wrong here. And I'm not going to argue on whether or not, like, you know, it wasn't like COVID was by accident or intentional. Regardless, like the response by our so-called leaders was just like, to me, I was like, what is seriously? Like, this is the way we're going to lock down, we're going to suppress. Like, I mean, there's just like, you could pick apart on so many different things, but yeah, I just like, eventually I was like, all right, we need to figure something out. And Bitcoin came into my mind. And then eventually it did kind of tie to my identity a lot. And it still kind of is, because I'm very passionate about it. And I do believe in its technology. So in a way, it's like this kind of dance of, and this podcast kind of helps with this, but this dance of not being too attached to Bitcoin as a part of my identity. Like if I have conversations with people and they start to say like, well, I mean, Ethereum's also, Solana is also, and I'm just like, yeah, sure. Like I you know, I don't get like triggered or anything, you know, I try to.
Sometimes you got to let people put their hand on the hot stove.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like listening to their perspective, and then it tests me on my knowledge. And I was talking to Michelle yesterday, and I was trying to tell her, I was like, you know, it's, you always want to check your knowledge and make sure that you're staying, you know, you have this, you have intention, clarity, you're staying humble, and you have some form of, humility and just consistently stacking your knowledge of Bitcoin and listening to what people have to say about different cryptocurrency, altcoins and whatnot. And so, I mean, I'm happy to listen to people, but I do understand that over time, humanity has coalesced around one currency. You know, like when you go to Costa Rica, Guatemala, Venezuela, Argentina, what are they striving and their energy of where they're putting their money is going into the US dollar. Like they'll exchange in different currencies.
Everything in Santa Teresa, Costa Rica was priced in dollars.
Yeah.
It's not priced in colones. Every restaurant you go to, everything.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you go to Venezuela, you go to Argentina, two specific countries that have a very devalued currency, hyperinflation, which essentially just causes chaos because you're unable to price things, and the fluctuation and the volatility of those prices for everything could change on a day-to-day basis. And so people are just like, they're just trying to survive at that point. And so if you're just trying to survive, society is just in chaos. So money being having the proper objective properties for money is very important for maintaining a stable society. And it's very, it's just, but yeah, so like, no, people in these different countries like Costa Rica, Venezuela, Guatemala, they're storing their value in US dollar, but they'll give you their currency as well.
Yeah.
And so, because it's the world's reserve currency right now. We'll see what happens in the next couple of years.
I mean, that's the other thing that's so interesting to me is like people speak with such certainty about, the dollar and its dominance and everything, but we're kind of in the middle of this like experiment, of the, post, not to get too wonky, but of the post Bretton Woods world where of fiat is, dominating. And it's like, for thousands of years, the US dollar was not the dominant currency. It was gold. It was, the pound. There's, you can trace it back time over time, but there's nobody alive who was around in any of those times anymore. So the US dollar dominance is all we know. And when you've never seen anything else, it's very hard to imagine what the world is going to look like when that comes to an end. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have Paleolithic mines, which I believe what that means is humans typically don't really feel the pain until it really occurs.
Yeah.
Some people can predict and prepare, but for the most part, I mean, people will typically, they'll react when the pain hits. And so, it's very interesting to see this play out in real time. And so I think, we're kind of going back and forth here, but I think it's really cool to hear your perspective of the startup that you used to work for and how you've evolved. And it seems, you're stepping into a new journey. So you were offered, potential, better path with this company, but you decided to do your own thing. So you want to share that?
Yeah, that was a pretty wild story.
Yeah.
In the fall, I basically, my time. So when you sell your company, you have what's called an earnout, which is when they basically like you have to stay for a certain amount of time to get the full value of what they were buying your company for. So my earnout was coming to an end at the end of last year. And there were some things that happened at the company that I was just kind of like dissatisfied. And so I was getting ready to leave. And I went to my boss and was like telling them that I was getting, that I was wanting to move on. And they were like, no, please stay. We want you to stay. We'll make your job easier. We'll pay you more. And I was like, okay, I'll listen. But I didn't really think I was going to stay.
Mm-hmm. And
so they come back with an offer to try and entice me to stay. And it wasn't, life-changing or anything. So I was about to say no to them. And some voice in the back of my mind was like, you know what? If you're just going to say no anyway, why not at least try and try a Hail Mary?
Yeah.
And make them a ridiculous counter offer where they'll probably say no to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you can put the blame on them. So a pattern that I have that I've recognized is very much being a people pleaser, not wanting to disappoint people. And so this was like a very easy cop out for me where I wouldn't have to disappoint them. I could just put the onus on them by making a ridiculous counter offer. They would say no, I'd be on my way. So I go back to them and I counter with triple the compensation that they had offered me, which I thought was a crazy get laughed out of the room kind of offer. And TLDR, I didn't get laughed out of the room.
Wow.
My boss's boss was like, okay, this sounds reasonable. I'm like, this sounds reasonable. I didn't think it sounded reasonable, but he then takes it to his boss, and his boss, it gets brought up to the number 2 person at the company.
Wow.
And she whatever, agrees to it. and there's just like one final, and this happens over the course of like 2 weeks. And then there's just one final like meeting that I have to have with her to kind of like seal it or whatever. And all along the way, I just had this like really, really like pit in my stomach where I was like, damn, I really hope that they say no. I'm really hoping. It's like the dog that caught the car. Yeah. I was like, what have I got myself into? And I basically realized that there was no price I could put on my freedom, my happiness. It's pretty, it was a substantial amount of money. I mean, it was going to end up being like over $1 million for a year. But at a certain point, I just knew intuitively how I felt like being at work, and how there were so many other things in my life from the spiritual path that were really calling me, that I was like, it was like a hard decision, but it was also a very easy decision. Like, I don't know, the body knows, I knew intuitively, and I needed to, this was kind of the first step in me trusting my intuition a lot more. And I basically said no. They accepted this insane offer, or they were about to, and I went to them and I said, appreciate it. It's been real. But this is just not aligned with what I want to do. So
yeah, I have so much respect. So you've told me this story before, but I wanted, to have it on the podcast. And I had so much respect for you for that. Like, I didn't know the numerical amount, but I was like, the fact that you proposed like triple the offer that they originally gave you, and then still listened to your intuition and how you felt, and still denied it. I was like, wow, this guy really means business with his own, just being within his own path,
Yeah. It was a big, and I appreciate that. And it was just a big reminder and a big lesson that, like, one, just the power of like negotiation. I mean, it was a very interesting negotiating point. Like, I never would have thought to do that, but also, if you jump, life will provide the net. Yeah. And that's really what the last few months have been.
It's a testament to how much they valued you too. That's very interesting. And so you've been on this kind of vagabond journey ever since. And so it's been cool to watch on social media, even though it's, you've been kind of present and you're not like posting too much, but still to see and hear and listen. We exchanged, voice messages, and just like to hear about your experience. Like, I was really fascinated because I was also going through this preparation for Costa Rica to do my ayahuasca retreat. And around the same, you were coming back from Costa Rica, and I was too. Though I was there for only a week, you were there for, or in Central America for a long time. And I was just, it might be due to the elevated emotions that I experienced the entire week I was there, but I was just in love with the feelings and the way of how society flowed in that rural part of Costa Rica. Yeah. There's just this like super relaxed feeling, very grounded, because it's clearly, if you're away from San Jose and you go, 3 hours into the mountains, into the jungle, it's, the industrialization of even the roads are just like dirt roads. And so, nature is just very much in your face and prevalent. And so you're just much more grounded, right? There's just animals everywhere. You can hear howler monkeys around you, and insects, and the birds there are just, I was telling Jay, Azeltine, my last guest, and the leader of the ayahuasca retreat, I was telling him, like, one of these birds, he sounded like, they sounded like R2-D2. It was just like crazy, and it would make me laugh every time I heard it. But yeah, I mean, just being out there for a week, I was like, wow, I could live here for months, and you did that. And so it actually prompted my mind to question, should I live in the US the whole time, like the rest of my life? like, am I bullish on the United States? And so it was like, I think, great timing to have you on. And I think even if you were still, if you were spending another couple months in Central America, I would have eventually had you on.
Oh yeah.
But I want to hear about how it started, how you got there. What was like the initial kind of motivation and the energy that kind of filled you to make the move and pull the trigger?
Yeah. I mean, so like I said, I have kind of been my identity has very much been like a worker, an achiever, a doer for a lot of my adult life. Did grad school, then did Wall Street, then did startup, then sold the startup, worked at the company. And so it was kind of like at every step of the way, my identity was like how I made income. And
that's normal for most men
very
in
much
the US.
Very
like
much
your self-worth is tied and attached to like how you are able to generate revenue.
Yeah. So. I mean, I forget, maybe it's like a Charlie Munger quote or something, but it's like, show me the incentives and I'll show you the results kind of thing. And obviously our society values that, your status and your desirability, et cetera, is very much dictated on, how much money you have, where you work, yada, yada. So I was kind of starting to like wake up from that and realize that was maybe, not a great recipe for a happy, fulfilled life. The way I think about it is like I was playing all of these different games and I was winning at them. And then once I won the game, I realized that like the prize wasn't that good. It was like finished top of my class in grad school and like felt good for a little bit, was like the best ranked associate in my Wall Street class. And that felt good for like a couple days when you get a big bonus. And then, selling your company, like that feels cool, but it never lasted. Yeah. And you could say the same thing with like whatever, sex or drug trip or good food. I mean, all of these things, I mean, this is kind of like the lesson of a lot of the spiritual studying that I've done is that the unifying feature of life is the kind of impermanence of everything, of anything, including these like peak experiences that we hear about. So I was kind of starting to wake up to that. And I was like, okay, I kind of want to, as I step off like the work treadmill, what do I want, and I have a blank canvas for what my life can look like. What do I want it to look like? And there was just something really that was calling me about being much more in tune with nature. I love speaking Spanish, fluent in Spanish.
Oh, really?
Yo hablo. Sí, sí, señor. Sí, my. And so I wanted to go somewhere where I could speak Spanish. And I just had a couple of different people in my life who had talked about Santa Teresa, Costa Rica, like Michelle had talked about it. She was there and a couple of others. And it was just this thing that was on my radar. And, I wanted to I didn't know how much I was going to like it or how enjoyable it was going to be. I just I booked a one-way ticket and I was like, screw it. It seems like it checks a lot of my boxes. And yeah, it was so beyond what I even could have expected. I will never forget just like driving into that town for the first time and just like driving through like the jungle. I just felt it was almost like Mother Nature was like wrapping me in her arms in a blanket. It was so powerful. And, even if you're only there for a few days, you very quickly, your bodily rhythm gets synced up to like the sun.
Yeah. That's something I noticed is, so it's still Central Time. It's the same time as Texas, but between the sun rising right around like 5:30 when I was there, and also the loud sounds of all of nature, the monkeys, I've already talked about it, but like how loud they were, you rise when the sun rises. And so it does, this was just a regular cadence for, primal human beings. Like that's exactly what would happen. But nowadays it's just, things are much more different. And so so rising with the sun, it puts you in that really healthy, flowing circadian rhythm.
Yes.
And it felt great. And I feel like if you do that for a couple months, your energy levels when it's flowing in this circadian rhythm. Because I'm waking up right now at like 5:15 and it's still dark here in Texas, you know?
Yeah.
So, you definitely get this energized feeling.
And I totally agree with that. And I think that there's, you know how, like, have you heard of an elimination diet with food? It's like this concept where you basically are taking away certain things, like you take out, I don't know, carbs, or you cut out, seed oils or whatever. You're cutting out certain things. And like, it's kind of like process of elimination to determine what is inflaming you, what's, and I feel like going to Costa Rica was like an elimination diet for like my environment, because you're taking out like artificial light, you're taking out traffic, you're taking out noise pollution, you're taking out 5G, you're taking out all of this stuff. And I was walking around, shirtless and barefoot, and for 4 months, and I just had never felt healthier. And it was really, really, really amazing.
Yeah. It's just crazy. The impact of just what you just stated there, these, subtractions of certain, things, modalities within modern US society, and being really, really grounded with nature and how healthy you feel and how different, like the contrast. And it's hard for people to grasp. Like, even if I were to tell certain friends from back home, or certain people in my life that have just been in the US the whole time, and if they go on vacation, it's maybe like a more touristy vacation, right? If you go into the jungles of like a rural, just you're submersed into nature, and you're there, and you're able to really ground yourself there. The health effects are much different. Like, you just would be surprised. Like, you'd be like, it's not just like, oh, I'm cutting out sugar and I'm not drinking as much alcohol. And no, it's like the sunlight, rising with the sunlight, being, just bare feet on the ground, being in the ocean. Like, it's very surprising how good you feel if you're in that rhythm for so long. And
I bet you noticed it coming back here.
I did. Yeah. And I was in Aruba too for like close to the end of the year, for like a family vacation, and it was still like a touristy area, but I was on the beach every day. I was in the ocean every day. I was away from my phone. I was just like eliminating certain things, and I could still feel it. Like my hair, my skin, like just looked great because of the salt water, and it was fantastic. But yeah, I mean, minus like going on the most powerful trip in regards to ayahuasca. I mean, just even like, being submersed into the jungle and hiking up, like we hiked up this mountain, but it's also, it's not like New Hampshire mountains. It's still vast jungles, right? It's vast jungles. And we actually, I think we heard a puma, which is pretty wild. Yeah. Like, you hear that and you're like, oh, that's cool. But wait, that's also really terrifying because...
I feel like in cities, or even in Austin, when you see, it's almost like if you see an animal, they're like encroaching on our turf here in the city. In Costa Rica, you're on their turf. I saw snakes, I saw tarantulas, I saw everything. And you're just like, you're coexisting with nature. Like, you're a guest in kind of Mother Nature's like house there, for sure.
Yeah, man. So it's very interesting to hear this illumination diet with your environment, and probably food too. And so you dropped into, was it San Jose, and then drove?
I flew into San Jose, and then there's a very tiny airport. I mean, it's not an airport, it's a parking lot. It's just a big parking lot near Santa Teresa. And they do a few flights a day, and it's like a 15-minute flight from San Jose, but you just fly like across to the peninsula.
And so you dropped down, and you weren't working at all this whole time.
took a solid like 2 months of zero, like because I'm kind of like a overachiever at some points. And so I had to give myself a rule that like, you cannot try and generate income of any kind or do any work. So yeah, I took like a solid 2 months of nothing.
Okay. And so, yeah, take me through the journey of, once you touched down into Central America, into Costa Rica, like were you just getting acquainted with the area? Did you have like things planned out already, or did you kind of make it free flowing of like, I'm just going to meet people and see how this, serendipitous. Yeah. Was it more intentional or serendipitous or a combination?
It was a little bit of a combination. I would say a theme for me in the last few months has been to just plan less, less planning, more being, less doing, more being. And so I tried to embody some of that. I mean, I had my housing like roughly figured out, and I knew a couple of people there, but I really just wanted to be open. And yeah, it was really, really, it was unlike anything I'd done so far, because I hadn't. I mean, I'd always had to work or been working and having a lot of structure. And this was just like very, very unstructured. Every day was kind of a blank canvas, which was super liberating, but also a little bit intimidating, because you're kind of like overwhelmed. What do I do? Yeah. So I just experimented with a lot of different stuff. I surfed a bit. I really got into yoga, started really falling in love with yoga. I found some amazing teachers down there, and it made me realize that like the yoga that we have in the US is like, it's like gymnastics. It's not really yoga. It's not really yoga. So that was a big part of it. And then there's just also there's like a semi-permanent group of people that are down there for like 6 months a year. They kind of come for like the high season.
From where?
From all over. Not a lot of Americans, honestly.
Europeans?
But like Argentinians, Canadians, Europeans, Israelis. Yeah, there weren't a lot of Americans there, which I actually kind of liked. But yeah, so there was just a group, this awesome kind of melting pot group of people that were all kind of similarly aligned. They're kind of like based hippies, I guess I would describe them, like very anti-authoritarian, but also very in touch with like spirituality and nature, which is just like, I don't know, I guess I kind of...
No, that's a great way to describe it. Based hippies.
Yeah, that's what they were. Because they were like, there were like ecstatic dances and meditation and cacao and all of this, like every night. But these people also just like loved freedom and being able to do kind of whatever they wanted. And I think, Santa Teresa got to be very popular during the pandemic as well, because they were very much like, compared to other towns, like super hands off on masks and closing stuff down and lockdowns. And so, it's kind of like has grown to attract that kind of vibe. And so it was very easy to like get into that community and make friends with them. And it was just, it was really, really special. I feel like it gave me a lot of clarity on what brought me alive, what lights me up. And I think just like was just incredibly nourishing as well to like totally disconnect from needing to work, to have an identity, to just like exist in the world and be able to wake up any day and decide what I want to do. Yeah.
One of the things that Sam said in my podcast was that men typically, they're trained to never fall off their horse. And if they do, it's just a sense of embarrassment or shame. And they would rather die, and be shot off their horse instead. And it's a metaphor for men having a deep, deep, deep attachment towards their sense of self-worth. Yes. And so as we progress throughout humanity and in time, that changes, right? So it changes, like we don't necessarily have to be a marksman with a gun, right? But we still need to support our family. And I think that what you are doing, what comes to mind is actually you're doing that. I think we're breaking this generational gap of not having the most awareness and ability to be emotionally intelligent and just in tune with our emotions, to feel and to be able to communicate in a way that's more strategic with people, that continues to help people grow in a more strategic way. And so by going out to Costa Rica and to other countries within Central America and practicing these different ways of living, ways of being that you're not used to, is a form of growing into a new age that I believe is right for men to get into, you know? So, and that might sound crazy. It's like, oh, you think that he's a strong man and he's challenging himself by fucking surfing on the beach, bro? You know? But, you know, being able to, well, one, you've worked very hard to get to where you're at, right? But to be able to detach from a job or a car or a stream of revenue, whatever it may be, and to just be who you are internally, that's not common nowadays, especially in the United States.
Very much not.
And
it's scary. It can be scary.
It is scary for sure. But you're making that, you're forming that path, and that's really cool to see.
Thank you, man.
And I look forward to watching your growth. It's the first time, I would say, since I've moved to Austin, just becoming like great friends with people here. And I've only been here for a year and a half, but I'm just so excited to watch these people in my life grow and expand and help others and lead. Because it seems like there is this presence, especially right here in Austin. There's this presence of leading, consciously.
Yes.
And that seems to be potentially a route that you want to take, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I very much on this trip kind of realized that through a lot of my career and just my general way of being in the world, I was like more comfortable behind the scenes and less comfortable in front of the camera, or less comfortable leading. Like at this startup, I was like I wasn't the CEO. I was just the co-founder, and in a lot of other stuff, I've kind of been, I mean, I have a friend of mine, he calls me the Rich Paul of tech Twitter. Do you know who Rich Paul is?
I'm not sure.
Exactly. So this proves the point. He's LeBron James's like business partner.
Okay, I've heard this.
Yeah. And so he's like the mastermind behind the scenes, but nobody knows who he is. I've asked like 10 people and nobody knows who Rich Paul is. So kind of proved my friend's point. So he observed this about me like a couple of years ago. And so it became very obvious to me that I was like much more comfortable as like the supporting behind the scenes guy. And for whatever reason, and I'm still trying to figure it out, I wasn't ready to like step into my power, as they say, or to like become kind of like the face of something. And I think this journey over the last few months has gotten me a lot more comfortable with that, a lot more willing to kind of like an openness to like share my gifts. And I think I was reluctant for some imposter syndrome and some general fear and stuff. But yeah, man, I think it's something that's really, really calling me to be of service to people in a way, in a kind of an in-person way where I am actually the face of it, not from like a sense of ego, but just like, it's just a gift that I want to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just the short amount of time that we've been friends, I've seen the change within you. You know, I can see it.
Wow.
And, you and Michelle, and Danny was there too. Shout out to Michelle and Danny Miranda.
Yes.
But you and Michelle, both reached out and just were two people that really wanted to hear about my experience, and also just were there like openly, respectfully, like naturally curious. And that's so important, especially after an ayahuasca journey, like the first one that I went through. And is very helpful, to come back and to be able to talk about that with you guys, to share it, and to not even really feel like I could, I wasn't really holding anything back for the most part. I mean, maybe a few things here and there that I'm still trying to process. Yeah. Because it's just like a lot to process, and I'm still doing that on a day-to-day basis. It's been like 3 weeks. But yeah, it's really important to be able to do that. And you and Michelle, I mean, Michelle has met a man and she's been doing this, like her own kind of conscious leading, emotional coaching. Yeah. She's got, she's expanding into different realms, and she's been doing this since I've known her. And so to see how you evolve, to be a conscious leader in person with, two other people that are trying to, have an impact on others. Like it's really important. And so, going out to Central America, and I'd love to hear more. Cause like we've discussed, I think it'd be great to talk about, and we can get into this now or later, but the meditation retreat that you went on, and the story that you told me about it, like that was really cool. But it seems like you did, a lot more like stuff, events. So I'd love to hear more, whatever you feel called to share, while you were there.
Yeah. So when I was there, I've been on this kind of meditation spirituality journey for probably close to 10 years. I started in about 2015 or 2014, when that was kind of like in the tech zeitgeist, like Tim Ferriss was talking about using Headspace as a productivity hack. And I thought it was like really cool. I did it as like,
that's around the time I did it too, or a little after.
Yeah. And, whatever Jack Dorsey was doing a Vipassana retreat and like all of this, it kind of was like in the air in tech. And so I got into it as like a productivity hack, as just a way to like be more efficient or be more effective. And even through meditating like 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day, I just noticed this incredible like relaxation and just like ease that I was able to find and I was just like present in my body and like aware of my thoughts for the first time that I can remember. It's like the difference from like being inside the washing machine to just like looking through that little glass door, of outside the washing machine. And so I was like, damn, what is this all about? And that got me down a pretty, a very intense rabbit hole over the years of getting very into Buddhism and other Eastern wisdom traditions and doing meditation retreats. And so it's become a bigger and bigger part of my life. And when I was in Costa Rica, I very much wanted to lean into that and just keep following that. And so I did a couple of meditation retreats, and the story that I think you're referencing was on this silent retreat that I did. It was a 5-day retreat. It was at this like eco village in the middle of the woods, very, very rustic. I had one of the only rooms that had air conditioning. It was like very, you're just kind of like amongst nature, to say the least. And the guy that was facilitating it was a student of Osho, the guy that was the subject of Wild Wild Country, the documentary. So it was like an interesting tradition, but you were in silence the whole time, and you meditated for several hours a day. And then this guy would give a talk in the morning and a talk in the evening. And that was the only what's the word? That was like the only stimuli that you would get. You were in silence the rest of the time. So it's a 5-day retreat. We're on day 3. And I'm feeling good. This is like my 4th meditation retreat. I'm like, oh, I'm so zen, like total ego trip happening where I'm just like at one with myself, the universe, feeling myself. And it's the evening. It's about 6:00 p.m. His nightly meditation is at 7. So I have like an hour, and I'm going back to my room to change. And I get to like my front door of my cabin, this like very like bit minimalist cabin. And I see like a bunch of ants at the front door. There's like 50 or so ants, like, kind of like congregating there. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. I open the front door and I look into the bathroom, and there's like another 150 ants in the bathroom. They're covering the shower head, the shower faucet, the sink, the toilet. I'm like, okay, this is like an infestation that's happening. Was a little kicked into like fight or flight mode a bit. And so I was like, okay, how do I fix this? Like, I can't have these ants here. And so I took a broom and started sweeping the ants out from the front door. And I'm just like furiously sweeping. And that was a pretty bad idea. Because 50 that were there left for a few minutes, but then like 100 came back, literally doubled. I'm like, oh shit, like what do I do now? So I get the broom again and sweep them out again. 100 ants leave, 200 come back. And this time they are like even more furious and pissed. And they're not just at the front door now, they're coming into the room. They're crawling in my luggage. They're crawling on the bed. It's just like something out of like a movie or something. You know, these ants are like super, super angry. And a couple get on my feet, and one of them bites me, and it hurt. I mean, it felt like a bad bee sting. And so
fire ants then.
I learned after what they were. I'll tell you what they were after. But they were, so this one bites me. And so I'm like, oh my God, this hurt from one ant. Like imagine 500 of them like swarming me. And at the same time, like we're getting close to the meditation. It's like, it's now 6:30 and I have ants infesting my room. So and again, this is not a hotel. There's not like a front desk. And even if there was, I'm in a vow of silence. I'm not allowed to talk to anyone. So I'm like, what the fuck do I do? Clearly have lost my zen majorly. So I run to the kitchen, and in the kitchen, there was like a volunteer woman. She didn't speak any English, so good thing I know Spanish. I wrote her a note. Like you're allowed to write notes in case of emergency. So I wrote her a note in Spanish explaining the situation. She looks at it and just like shakes her head and starts laughing, which irritated me even more. But in Spanish, she wrote back, there's nothing we can do. They usually stay for like 7 or 8 hours. And so if they're still there when it's time to go back, you can just sleep here in the restaurant on a bench. And I'm just like, what the like sleep outside on a bench? Like at this point it's 6:50. So the meditation is like about to start. I have to, there's nothing I can do. Sprint from the restaurant to the meditation hall, sit down. And I am just like totally in a tailspin mentally. I'm like so furious. Just like mind is whirling like a bull in a china shop. On the one hand, I'm like, these ants are infesting my room. Like, what happens if I can never go back there? What happens if they ruin my clothes? What happens if I get bit? And then the other hand, I'm like, well, if I have to go, like I paid all this money, I paid thousands of dollars. I have to sleep on a bench in the restaurant. Like what the hell? It's going to ruin, I'm going to get a terrible night of sleep. It's going to ruin my ability for the rest of the retreat. So all of these thoughts were, absolutely kind of driving me crazy. And about 30 minutes into this meditation, finally, I just like come back to my breath, ground myself a little bit. And the whole kind of like mantra of this whole retreat that he keeps reinforcing is that this moment is perfect exactly as it is. Like there's nothing to do. There are no problems. There's only a problem because of ego. Like existence is perfect in every moment. And so I kind of just remember that, and I slowly just feel the body like relaxing, and I just kind of like take a very deep breath, and I'm like, you know what? If I have to sleep outside, whatever. If my stuff gets ruined by ants, it doesn't matter. None of it ultimately matters. And so I am like able to like calm down. The mind calms down a bit. And so the meditation ends, and I'm getting ready, and I walking back to the cabin. I'm like preparing myself. Okay, I need to get my flashlight. I need to get my blanket. I need to get the pillows to sleep in this restaurant outside. And I get back to the cabin, and I get to the front door, and like the ants that were there before aren't there. I open the front door and walk in and look around. There's not a single ant anywhere in the cabin. I looked everywhere. I looked under my bed, under my pillow, in my luggage. There were, close to 1,000 of them there before, just a few hours before. And it turns out that it's this type of ant that is called limpiadores, which means cleaners in Spanish. And they basically come into people's houses and they scavenge for the queen. These are like the drone ants or whatever. They come in, they scavenge for dead insects to bring back to the queen. They stay for a few hours, they do their thing, and then they leave. But there's nothing you can do about them. Like people in Costa Rica, they just leave their house when this happens. You can't kill them. You can't sweep them out, obviously. So that was just like an amazing lesson in surrender to me. It was like everything. It was like, you can't come up with a better meditation lesson on a meditation retreat than something like that, getting absolutely thrown for a loop, having your whole world be kind of like turned upside down, stirring stuff up, and then you surrender to it and it just kind of takes care of itself.
That's such a good story. Oh man. And like, I can just feel and empathize with you, your ego, just like saying, like, just tossing all of these different thoughts of like, what am I going to do? Are these ants going to, crawl into my ear or whatever when I sleep? And yeah, like this is a meditation retreat. This is a once in a, blue moon kind of event that I'm going to do. And so like, this is totally disrupting everything. Yes. And the fact that you were able to just let your thoughts flow, let go, allow them to come in. And that's one of the bigger lessons that I learned from my Costa Rica retreat, is just to allow things to come to you and just to be aware of it, you know? And that is, that's such a perfect lesson.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Olympia do it. So they were cleaning your bathroom, man.
Just cleaning, yeah.
They were helping you out.
You were trying to get their food.
Fucking sweeping their asses out.
Yeah. Very, very non-Buddhist of me to be kind of like getting
but like,
rid of the ants.
Anybody that's not from that area, you don't get that here. So your instinct is to be like, holy shit, I got to clean my house. So to be able to recognize that and just to be aware and to let it go. It's funny that she just like looked at your note and laughed at you. Just like, good luck. I do think it is kind of a broader, it was the broader lesson too, is that and I think it's a lot in the West, secular rationalist West, we kind of view everything as a problem. Like we view ants are a problem to get rid of. We view pain as a problem that you need to cure. We really have this like adversarial view towards the universe. And on the meditation retreat, one of the quotes that they said was that like, instead of you trying to arrange the universe to your liking, like just allow the universe to arrange you to its liking. And that's, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Fucking bunch of ants just giving you some cosmic consciousness shit, bro. Yeah. Meditation. I started around 2016-ish, maybe, or 2017. And I was through Tim Ferriss. And that has been a very crucial activity, tool, whatever you want to call it, to recognize what you just said. Not, all these things are, your ego or your mind just wants to kind of be in control of different things. And to just allow the universe to go in its own, natural flow. Obviously you can do certain things, that's not to say you should just sit idly and do nothing. Right. But, there is agency within us that we can, utilize, but, when you're put into these moments, it's such a soothing way to flow through life, and especially through very, very difficult moments. If you have certain conflicts that you have with your relationships, a death in the family, or, injuries that you may have, just, this is, like Jay, my last podcast guest, he's had a few injuries. One was being his knee, and it changed his path forever. He was going to change his path to, I think he was going to be some kind of elite competitor in strength training. And now he's leading ayahuasca retreats, And so he did a lot of rehabilitation and like therapy for it. But it totally changed his path. Right. And he allowed it to happen. And it's just given him a lot of life lessons. So instead of walking away with like, this is a problem, I need to fix it, and just get angry and direct your energy in an angry form, you're actually saying, okay, how can I look at the positive in this? How can I learn about this? How can I just allow it to happen? It's just a life-changing thing.
Yeah. That lesson, especially with our physical body, I think is really, really important. It's been interesting. I feel like a lot of people that I've known that have had kind of like a spiritual curiosity or have wanted to get deeper down the spiritual path, it's been because of some like seemingly catastrophic physical thing that has happened to them. It's pain. It is, you know, which I didn't tell you in my background, but like I had I had like chronic sinus issues for probably 3.5 years, 5 surgeries, like was very, very much in physical pain. You know, I know people that have had really bad bouts of Lyme disease, or people that have had loved ones who've committed suicide, all of these like kind of things where either severe injury or death comes up, and it makes you question whether you are your body, or what, you know, makes you question the identification with the body. It's like, if you are only your physical body, then yeah, it's pretty bad. If you suffer a bad, you know, knee injury, or if you have to have surgery, or if you have Lyme disease. But if you're more than that, or if you're not limited to that, then it kind of presents an opening for you to investigate and get curious.
Yeah. And Noah had a quote in his book, This Way to the Stars. And he was on the podcast, you know, last month or so, month and a half. And the quote was really an interesting way to describe exactly what you're saying. It's like, pain is this pain that we're dealing with, the degree of the pain accelerates the inertia of change into a different path. And so for him specifically, he talks about this in the episode. He had this really, you know, just great path. Like from an objective standpoint, you would look at Noah as just being very successful in different areas of his life, just like you on Wall Street and all this other stuff. And he got into a romantic relationship, and eventually, like he thought he was going to marry her, and that wasn't the case. And so that totally just changed him, and there was pain, and that's what broke through this path of him being a lawyer. Like he knows now, I believe, and I'm pretty confident that he's much more happier with his path right now than being a lawyer at a top firm for a lawyer.
I still can't believe he's a lawyer. It's just like,
he still is a lawyer,
very
for startups,
for his whole personality,
consulting,
and his whole, what he's all about. But yeah,
but right, it's given him a branch of a path, a different pathway that now, to me, I mean, he seems like he's in his element. Like he seems like he's in his own natural path. And so the breaking through that inertia, like pain sometimes is the only fucking way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened to me. You know, like I expressed that too. There was a moment in my life where I turned 25 and like someone just ran, I'd never even heard of this before, but like I've heard of a mid-life crisis, but someone was like, oh, so you're gonna go through a quarter life crisis? I was like, this is my quarter life crisis. What the fuck? Like, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just like happy about my birthday. Yeah. Then I start really thinking about it. Yeah. I was like, oh shit, I'm 25. I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna live till I'm 100, but we'll see how technology goes now.
Yeah. And you cut out drinking, so that'll help.
Yeah. Yeah. And so around that age is when I dropped a lot of things. I dropped my really one and only like serious relationship, and I had a decent job. It wasn't like the best paying job, but it was like I was making the right relationships that it would get me far up the branch of within the, you know, that company. And man, I was just going through so much pain. Like there was just a lot of stuff to deal with. And you know, I was working like 50 to 60 hours a week in the restaurant operations business. I wasn't sure about the relationship, within this relationship with this really beautiful, nice girl. I just internally my compass was not, it was so out of whack. And I was drinking I was drinking a lot. I was working so many hours. I was eating unhealthy. I had different shifts. So my schedule was all over the place. And I just knew intuitively, I was like, something is wrong.
Yeah.
And so what I did was just I dropped most of it. And
elimination diet.
Yeah, it was a big one. It was a big one. And it was painful to do those things too. Yeah. I was dealing with pain ongoingly, but making those decisions was not fucking easy. And it has clearly led to at least for me, it's absolutely led to a much better place. But yeah, pain definitely can help you with changing your perspective and forcing you into a different mindset.
Yeah, it's so funny. And it's like it's very cliche. This is going to sound like a fortune cookie, but it's like the things that you think are so like are curses in the moment just turn out to be the biggest blessings possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's like something that you would wish with all of your might wouldn't have happened. You're like, it totally changes puts your life on this indescribably good trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something that, if you're okay with talking about, you said you had some, multiple years of sinus challenges, right?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Started probably in 2016, maybe end of 2015.
Okay.
And basically it was around the time I started getting into meditation, ironically. I basically just had recurring sinus infections that wouldn't go away despite antibiotics, despite surgeries. It was just, it wasn't, I tested my place for like mold, and it was just like in kind of, undiagnosable, I guess, in a sense. And it just persisted for a long time. It just had me having like low energy, and it made it, challenging to be super social. And I think, in hindsight, I now think that it just goes to show you how there are certain things that like Western medicine just can't answer. But also it was a really amazing opportunity to like question, what leading like a normal, healthy life is, and like seeing, because when you're, this was when I was late 20s. It's like you kind of think you're immortal and going to live forever, and that nothing can knock you down, and you just have these like an infinite supply of days where you're going to feel good and be healthy and all of that. And it really threw a lot of that into question. Fortunately, it's like totally behind me, and I think a lot of it was some of the lifestyle stuff of partying and living in New York and all of this. It's like very related, but yeah, it was definitely a challenging time period.
Yeah. It's definitely been moments in my life too, where I've had lessons of, just major lessons that have brought my mortality into the light of just like, okay, you're not going to live forever. I'm 29. I'm going to be turning 30 in 3 weeks. This lesson still was kind of being like, I've had multiple lessons, but, when I got COVID, it was, I think, around the Delta variant. And it was right when I got to Austin, like literally the first month I was here, I got like Delta, and, I'm unvaccinated. So I didn't get the vaccine. And I wasn't planning on getting the vaccine, but I had no idea what to do when I had it. Yeah. So like at first I thought it was allergies, because I heard that because of cedar season, there's a lot of pollen here. And I've actually, if you listen to my next episode is releasing in like 2 days, you can hear it in my voice when I came back from Costa Rica. Yeah. It's like that time of the year in Austin right now. So I thought it was that. And certain colleagues of mine were like, this usually happens around this time. And I was like, okay. So like 3 days went by, and then I started getting like night sweats and like aches. And I was like, okay, this is not. So I got a test, and I tested positive. And then I went to a pharmacy that was amazing. It's Austin Compounding Pharmacy.
Okay.
This like hole in the wall, like independent pharmacy. Nice. It has like just great, like kind of like, have you ever been to Alive and Well?
Yeah, dude, I love that place.
Their pharmacy is fantastic.
I love that place.
And this, when you call this, not Alive and Well, but this other one, Austin Compounding Pharmacy, I call them up, and they start off with an automated message. It says, "Yep, we have ivermectin." And I was like, "What?" And this is the time where there was so much stigma thrown at ivermectin. That's amazing. As the horse drug.
They know their target audience pretty well.
Yeah. So I got prescribed that, as well as, they called it their Corona 6-pack, and it was just it's just like basic supplements. So a high dosage of, vitamin D,
Yeah, D.
vitamin C. There's a lot of they have some Chinese like it's almost like powder. It's like just compounding medicinal, like ancient, Chinese herbs and whatnot that helps with fatigue, zinc, and there was like a few others within that 6-pack. And I started taking the ivermectin and all these different things that were in accordance with the FLCCC, which is like the frontline COVID care.
Yeah.
Which is still to this day, there, I think I forgot his name, who he was, but he was on Joe Rogan. And I started taking all these things and I felt amazing within like 2 days. It really helped.
Yeah.
And it was just I guess a testimony to, you don't, like, the vaccine isn't just the only thing that can help you with this.
I mean, COVID aside, I would say before anyone is prescribed medication for anything, like, you should have to, like, in some way prove that you've been like sleeping 8 hours a night and have been getting sunlight and have not been like eating terrible diet, all of these things. It's like, there's so much, like, our bodies are natural disease fighters and naturally immensely capable of being super powerful and being super healing. The body can heal in just so many amazing ways. So.
And where I was going with that is that eventually, I thought I was fine. So it was like 10 days went by and I was taking all those meds, and it was ACL. It was the first ACL that I had. So I went to go to ACL and I had a few drinks. It was multiple drinks, 2 days in a row. Yeah. But I felt physiologically like it was gone. So one, I had to take a test and prove it to get into ACL. So I was negative, but the effects didn't really feel like they were lingering. But once I started drinking, I was like, I feel a little off. And then, I mean, there was like one night where I woke up in the middle of the night and just like cardiovascular, and my lungs just did not feel good. And I was like, oh. And then months following, it took a while to like actually feel better.
Really?
Yeah.
So you had kind of like longer term symptoms.
Yeah. So
long COVID?
Long COVID, I think it's called. And so I got a little nervous. I was like, I think my cardiovascular health has been affected by this. So I mean, now it feels great. I've gone to the sauna 5 days a week. Yeah. I mean, I'm like pretty healthy. I would say, I'm strength training 4 to 5 days a week. I run. I have a stand-up desk, so I'm not always sitting.
I told you you're looking shredded, so it's working for you.
Yeah, I just started taking this creatine too to help with the physical gains. Yeah. But so sauna and ice have been helpful for sure. And it seems like, according to Peter Attia and like Andrew Huberman, that sauna, if you do it like 2 to 3 days a week for a certain amount of time, it can cut out, it cuts out all-cause mortality, the rate to, from 20 to 30%. And if you do it 5 days a week, it's like up to 40%. Yeah. And I feel much better. And I don't have any issues with my cardiovascular health, but it was kind of like a reminder, like you're not going to live forever and you need to take care of your health. And ever since then, it's just been, now it's been easy, like being here at Squatch. Yeah. So,
the interesting thing to me is like you kind of need to strike a balance between, like, you shouldn't totally treat your body horribly and, eat like shit and do drugs and whatever, but also becoming super obsessed with fitness to the point where it's all you think about and it's all you do and it's how you optimize your life. Mm-hmm. That's its own form of suffering. Mm-hmm. And neither of them is good. And so for me, it's kind of been figuring out what the right like middle balance is between that.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing how stress is just just such an ager to your health, right? So if you are very aware of your fitness routine, you're like extremely trying to be extremely healthy, but at the same time, psychologically, you're just like so scrutinizing your the way that you're going about it, and you're causing stress, like you're literally defeating the purpose, because stress is so, like, just inducing stress on yourself is like the number one cause of just decreasing your lifespan.
Yeah.
So you have to, you have to have this kind of like, eloquent balance, this dance of just like, do the staples, get some sunlight, drink enough water, exercise at least three days a week. And if you have a sauna nearby, like that's a great addition. And then like relationships are very important.
Yes.
Like that's what can cause stress too. So it's like, there's a book that I have, and I'm going to be probably diving into again. It's called Nonviolent Communication.
Oh yeah. I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet.
It's very helpful to be able to have really challenging conversations in any realm. I mean, like you could be a father, you could be a brother, you could be a wife or a husband. And this book can help you with, how do I speak to someone in a moment where it's very challenging? It could cause a lot of emotions and arguments. How do you effectively speak to people in a manner it's very hard for the other person to like, react to you in like a harsh way. And so yeah, man, there's a quote Naval has said before. I think it's a Confucius quote, but it's like, man has two lives, and he realizes he only has one, or his second life starts when he realizes he only has one.
Yes.
And that's so true, at least from my personal, just like the time I've been living. There are certain moments where you have different events that occur in your life that you're like, wow, okay, I've been fucking around for far too long, and I need to like take charge and maybe change the way that I've been handling myself. Yeah. So, I'm glad that you got through this sinus.
Thank you.
3 years. It's a long time. And just the past 2.5 weeks being congested with these allergies after this retreat, I've been like I've had a lot of just motivation to meditate more and doing breath work. And it's been really hard to do that with the allergies. And so you realize like, oh, wow, like, people have a lot of desires, but once you get unhealthy and once you get sick, it's like you only need one desire, and it's just to be healthy again. So I'm glad that you were able to get through that, and it's also an impactful, growing, step forward for you. Yeah, totally. So there's got to be other trips or interesting things that happened in Central America. You did describe how there's a lot of things that were in sync with like certain synchronicities that occurred. Yeah, man, this was really bizarre. So I kind of like intellectually got like spirituality and believing that there could be some power greater than us. And like I intellectually understood, that enlightenment is when all your suffering goes away and you're kind of at one with the universe. But I never really like felt any kind of like actual, connection. Did your family, or did you have any previous religious practices like Catholicism or Christianity? Grew up Jewish, but very publicly like denounced my Judaism at my confirmation. Whoa, you denounced it publicly? Yeah, I basically like, there's this like confirmation. So in Judaism, I think confirmation is like when you're 15 or something. Okay. And I gave a talk at our confirmation that was like very much like questioning like whether God exists and like the wisdom of the Old Testament. It was I don't know, it was on brand for me as a teenager, but safe to say that I was like not, I didn't really believe. And for most of my adult life was just like, rationalist, secular, Western material world is all there is. When you die, that's it, lights out. The point of life is to like enjoy it as much as possible and accumulate as much status and money and whatever. Nice. F bitches, get money. And that was just, and like New York definitely reinforces that. Yeah. And hello, it's like the ground zero for that. So I am coming from
from that background. And honestly, that background served me well in getting ahead. It's like, you know, trust science, trust like the material world. It has your back. Trust capitalism. So yeah, so I was never really like open to, I'd been closed off from like spirituality for a while. Never had I never like talked to God or never had anything that like paranormal happen to me, I'll say. And then in Costa Rica, actually, just this series of really eerie coincidences started happening in about
Eerie, you said?
Eerie. Yeah.
Okay.
Eerie, like scary, paranormal, like just weird.
Okay.
Freaking weird. So I mean, I'll just give some examples. And I started keeping a list, but there was like so many that I had to stop writing a list because it was like, there got to be that many. So it started coming out of a meditation retreat. And there was just like a couple of, on the meditation retreat, I like thought about certain people. And like, I thought about this woman that I hadn't talked to in like 5 years. And I get back and she's like messaged me. Or I was talking about this company that I had invested in that I hadn't heard from the founder in 9 months. And I get back from the retreat and like, he has an email. There's an email from him in my inbox. Or I had a vision that one of my friends was like going to tell me something about their child. And I get back and they sent me like the gender reveal.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. It was like crazy, crazy stuff that is like any one of them kind of in the abstract is like not notable, but like
just kept happening.
It kept happening. Then there were a couple other even crazier ones. So the first one that comes to mind is I did a ceremonial psilocybin experience there, and it was at this like shaman's house. Really, really beautiful. There were 3 participants on it. And when we got to the house, before we even had taken any of the medicine, I was just looking around, and this dude has a huge bookcase, probably 100 books on it. And, you know, Ram Dass and Be Here Now, the book. So that book was on the shelf. Amazing book, beautiful book. And for whatever reason, my eyes were like really drawn to it. And that was the book that stood out on the shelf. And so I just kind of like filed that away or whatever. We sit down, we're laying down, we take the medicine, and I'm laying on my back. And I'm kind of going into my journey or whatever. And I get this vision that that I'm supposed to start opening that book and start paging through it. And we're like an hour into the experience. I finally sit up and open my eyes, and I look down at my feet, and the book Be Here Now is sitting like 6 inches from my left foot. And I'm like, what just happened? Turns out the guy sitting next to me had randomly gotten it, started reading through it, was done with it, and put it down like right next to me. And I was like, okay, this is like, did I just like manifest this? Then there's another pretty interesting one where, so in Costa Rica, I was staying at this like group of apartments, kind of like a very nice hostel, probably 6 or 7 apartments. There was this woman who was staying in the apartment next to me, and she was there in like, I don't know, the beginning of January, and she was moving to the US. She was from France, was moving to the US, and we were only there for a week together. And have you ever had this with someone where like you just kind of feel like a vibe, like a connection? You're not really sure why. It might not even be romantic. You just feel like you're energetically drawn. So I had that with this woman. Like we talked for a little bit when she was there. Nothing romantic happened, but I just felt this like connection. She left. She went to Miami. She was living in, and I had thought in my mind, I'm like, I need to message her. Like just something was telling me to do that. So but I was procrastinating on it. So I was like, for whatever reason, I was like either afraid of getting rejected or of her not, reciprocating, or of her not responding. And so I just put it off for like 3 weeks, and end of January comes. And for whatever reason, I'm like, all right, today's the day. I'm going to do it. I'm going to hit her up on WhatsApp. I'm going to tell her how great it was to meet her. I'm going to tell her like she should, you know, if she wants to come to Austin to check it out, it would be cool. So I go on my patio or whatever at the apartment. I message her and I put my phone down, and 15 minutes later, she walks through the front door of the apartment complex. And at this point, I'm just like, whoa. Like first I sprinted to try and I thought I was like seeing things. So I sprinted down to try and find her, couldn't find her. So I came back up and I was like, all right, like you're just seeing things, you're hallucinating, like no way that actually happened. Like, you know, because my heart was like beating out of my chest. I thought I was either going insane, which was not good, or that I had unearthed this power to manifest, which was also very intimidating and very scary. And so either of these options was like pretty overwhelming. So like heart is just beating out of my chest. It's like, okay, you didn't see her, you're just making it up, all good. And then sure enough, she like hits me up on WhatsApp. A few minutes later, she's like, hey, Alex, like really funny timing. I had a change of plans and I'm back in Costa Rica. I just checked into that apartment complex.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, dude, there's been 30 other things like that have happened. It's even continued since I've been back in Austin.
Huh. That's unreal. So, something that comes to mind is that when you were talking about one of these kind of synchronized events with the book, this book here. You know, I was discussing this very, very briefly in my last episode. But the foreword is written by a different gentleman, a different person than the author. And that person's name is Stephen Larson, which is my father's name. It's just spelled differently, but it's the first book that came, you know, that caught my eye prior to entering the ayahuasca ceremonies. Yeah. And then after the ceremonies, I started to read it and I was like, oh, it's my dad's name. And as I was reading, I was like, this is this book is amazing. And I've told you about it. And I think it is good for you to read after you experience it. And I can see why it's better after, because like you can really feel what this author is saying after you've gone through the experience. But there was another book. This other book was by Joe Dispenza, who's very well known nowadays. And it's called Becoming Supernatural. And there's like the first few chapters, I mean, have already just like kind of blown my mind. He talks about these different things that for the most part, you know, I don't know if it was the foreword or the first chapter, but he pretty much says like, I'm going to get in trouble for this. Because he's a doctor. And so what he starts to talk about does seem like there's like this kind of Eastern, you know, mysticism kind of woo-woo hippy dippy bullshit, right? But he describes it very eloquently with this intricacy that you can granulize and understand through biology and chemistry. Which is awesome. So he talks about entering the quantum field, right? And so this quantum field is essentially just this void, this unknown. And that's kind of what happens if you really meditate for like a few hours. There's just moments where you are not focused on anything. You're not focused on there's no like really, your thought process is like done. And there's just like, when I was talking about divergence and convergence, that's from Joe Dispenza speaking to meditation. And I think I could be mixing them up, but convergence is when you're focused on a specific part of like your body, like a section. And then divergence is just like the energy around you, just like the room that you're in, like the wall or whatever, you can kind of like, you know, take a telescope from, you know, above you or whatever. And he talks about his son and other people that have gone to like conferences and how they have these big desires of trying to like bring in fulfilling things within their life. And one of them, you know, has been, for his son specifically, he wanted a job, right? And so he puts the job in the center of a piece of paper and he draws it. And then these like squiggly lines to show these like energetic fields. And then there on the left side of the drawing is intentions. On the right side is the elevated emotions that you would feel if this were to come into your life. And he just talks about how he wanted a job with these specific intentions. So like he could have a contract that wasn't super it wasn't, defining for a long period of time.
Yeah.
He could travel wherever he wanted to. He loved surfing. And just like different, like more clear indications of what that job description would be. And then on the right side, the elevated emotions would be like, bliss, freedom, joy. And, so then he would meditate, and that meditation is like, you imagine that job and you imagine the intentions and you imagine you really try, it's not easy, but you try to fill yourself with those emotions as you're meditating, the emotions that would arise if you were to get that thing. Right. And then once you do that, you kind of, if you meditate long enough, essentially you're kind of going into the unknown, right? You're just practicing going into the unknown, and you just go through this practice. And, Joe Dispenza has done this for many, many, many different people, and people do this practice. And, in a way it is kind of like manifesting certain things into your life. And it sounds like such bullshit. I get it. Like if you're listening to me, you don't have any spiritual background or meditation background, like I get it, how it sounds. But from a personal standpoint, I was just talking to you about, just doing this recently. I just did this practice recently. I'm looking for like a romantic relationship, and I've been kind of clear on the intentions that I would like within this relationship and the emotions that I would feel. Yeah. And there's certain blockages within my life that are kind of preventing that from happening. The ayahuasca experience has helped with that. But then I did this for the first time recently. And then the other day I go to Third Eye Lounge, and I was going there to actually bring back this package of cacao because it tasted terrible. Okay. Like I've bought in their packages before. Their stuff's usually good, and I've bought in multiple packages before. Yeah. But I bought it somewhere else, and it had no date on the back. And I had the woman there that worked there smell it, and she's like, "Yeah, this does smell kind of weird." So they let me get a new one, and so I had a cup of cacao, and there was a woman there that was sitting on the couch. Like I didn't say a word to her. I had no idea who she was. She follows me now on Instagram, so maybe she'll watch this episode. Hi, but she was very open and generous. Like she just introduced herself or asked me a few things. We just started conversing. We literally did not know each other at all. And she starts to talk about Guatemala. And then I started talking about like what I do. And like, I also do a podcast, and you just got back from Guatemala and from a specific lake. Yeah. Lake Atitlan. The last picture that's on your Instagram is from this lake. And she was talking about that. And, she talked about that before I brought you up. Wow. And then I said, "Oh, my friend was just there." And so I brought up your Instagram just to see if maybe you ran into each other. Yeah. She's like, "I don't think we have, but that's the lake that I was just at." And then she gives me this little Guatemalan bag. It says Guatemala on it. And then we link up on social media, and she helps in different realms. It seems like different types of coaching, but one of them is intimacy, romantic intimacy. And that's something that I'm trying to strengthen. Yeah. And it was very interesting. And, but the reason why I describe all of this is because within these two books that have come within my purview during the most, magical experience I've had, this combination has been really interesting. In Joe Dispenza's words of, you're literally, when you're thinking of different thought patterns or you're just performing different habits, there's an actual electrical pattern of neurons. Mm-hmm. So there's electricity generating in your brain. And then there's also, when you have emotions in your heart, there's a magnetic effect. So there's an actual electromagnetic field around you. Mm-hmm. And people I don't think about that. I don't think about human beings being like that. Yeah. Right. You have this electromagnetic field around you. And when you meditate, there is a frequency, like vibrations, there's a brainwave frequency that is either in coherence or incoherence. And so when you practice meditation and you're present, your brain waves, your thought patterns, you get into a more coherence. Like just the waves, they actually measure these waves. Yeah. And so you're optimizing your body, your thought process, you're literally just the way that you are, who you are, in a much more coherent, optimal, healthy way. And so if people can understand that from like an actual scientific view, like the US secular rational, scientific understanding that, oh, wait a second, like if you practice these things, there's actual scientific measurements that show meditation truly can bring internal changes that can heal you, right? So you go into these deep meditations that Joe Dispenza has shown testimonials of people that have like deep, like really terrible illnesses like cancer or anything like that, and they're able to heal them. I mean, you go look it up on Joe Dispenza, but it's pretty miraculous in how you go into this different part of your brain, your brain where you're getting out of the neocortex, but you're getting into oh man, I'm forgetting now, but it's a part of your brain that essentially is controlling without you having to consciously think about all of the parts of just like your heart beating and your immune system and all of that. But when you focus on that and when you meditate and you get into that deep void of just the unknown, your body is more focused on that aspect of your brain, or your brain is more in tune with that part of your brain. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And your body can heal in ways that you think is mystical in a way, that can't be explained.
And there's a phenomenon in science called like spontaneous remission, which I don't know if you've ever looked it up or anything, but it's literally like it's the scientific term for what you're describing. It's like where their ability to, and I think there's a good like Netflix or YouTube documentary about it, but it's like, people that have healed themselves via whatever Joe Dispenza's method of curing cancer and stuff. It's like science to some extent acknowledges that it exists, that they can't explain it, but due to their own incentive, a lot of the incentives, it's like they're not going to publicize that or like want to promote that. And the other thing that came up that for me with what you're saying was that it's not just that it affects you, it's very perceptible to other people when you are in tune with that flow, when you are kind of like more coherent with your whole energy. I'm sure that's why that woman started talking to you. Honestly, it's like, I've even noticed it.
We were talking about this off the mic right before the podcast. Yeah.
Like a lot of your people can kind of,
they're
like
attracted to
they're attracted. There's a magnetism to it.
It's a natural attraction. So like when you're constantly anxious about, I need friends or I want to attract people, that's almost like an energetic push away.
Totally.
And when you're just that's what I've experienced. And I was discussing with you about a specific person that I spoke with after my ayahuasca retreat, and they had no idea that I was, that I went through my experience. And based off of just, because it was on the phone, I mean, just the tone of, kind of like this ease of it's okay to talk about anything you want. And they opened up so much so that they talked about vulnerable things that I never thought they would talk about. And this is like, close person in my life. And I was just very surprised. I was like, one, they had no idea that I went on this ayahuasca retreat. Two, during the ayahuasca, in the force of the medicine, I thought of them and I prayed for them. And then they called me after, and they literally the most healing kind of conversation that we've ever had. And I didn't even ask for them to do it, right? Like they just did it.
It's beautiful, dude.
Yeah, it's wild. And so I'm very excited for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like I think it's one of these things where you kind of have to go through it and experience it for it to be believed. Like I don't know. Maybe people listening,
I totally agree,
sound like we sound crazy. And probably 6 months ago, I would have just discounted a conversation like this. But I think it's a little bit similar to like stuff with work, which is that if you had told 25-year-old Alex that you're going to build a company, you're going to sell it, you're going to make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, you're not going to feel fulfilled. So like, don't do it. 25-year-old me would have been like, fuck off. Like, I'm going to go do this. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, there's just certain things that you need to like experience directly for yourself. You can't really it doesn't work to take other people's words on it. You gotta got to put your hand on the stove sometimes, I guess.
Yeah. And a part of coming back to was like, well, one, I want all the people that I love the most to go through what I went through, but I also can't ever force this, right? I can't even, and when I describe this to the people that I care about the most, I have to just explain it in a way of how it was transformational, but I should never force it onto them, right? Yeah. Like it's only if they feel called to it. And so I also recognized through that, I was like, I know that there's going to be people in my life that listen to how we're talking and how I describe my experience. And they're going to be like, this shit is just so ridiculous. He is out of his mind.
Yeah.
And, I still haven't really, I had a episode with Jay who led the retreat, and it's releasing soon. And I've had off the mic conversations, but I'm like trying to write about it now too, because I watched this previous episode with Jay, and the way that it flowed was fantastic. His fiance was here sitting in that chair over there.
Amazing.
It was like short and sweet. It was like a little over an hour, but just the conversation flowed great. It was perfect. The emotions were in tune with like how it still resonated and was there from the retreat, the ayahuasca, the bonding and the connection. But I still I'm super hypercritical of myself, and I listen to how I described it, and I'm like, oh man, I should have worked on my vocabulary and grammar, because this experience is just so profound that you want to be able to reach people deeper, at least with your vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I didn't really describe it that well. But so a part of me, that's why I want to write about it, so that I can kind of talk about where I was at before. Right. Talk about what led to it, that I was a rational person, that I was just, secular and, get a job, go to college, all this other stuff. I didn't have a spiritual practice before this. And my intention going here was to be like, let's see if this has some kind of, maybe acceleration into a spiritual practice. And it absolutely has. Yeah. I still don't know exactly where it could go, but it's definitely given me this internal revelation to be like, wow, there's more to life than what I thought previously. So writing it out, and that's something that, I know that you plan on doing your ayahuasca retreat. I've journaled a lot. And I think that journaling, if you can in the midst of it or after it's pretty important. And to just kind of become more of a skilled writer, because if you become more of a skilled writer, you can really granulize, crystallize through the words, even though words they're not always, they don't do it justice, but they can help with really deepen your own understanding, but help other people understand you and what you went through better. If I just keep saying, because I said this so many times with Jay, I was like, oh, it's so beautiful, so magical. But if you can really, describe what, the context before, what happened during, and how I feel after, and how this is affected, it's really, it's very, I think important. So I'm trying to build that out, but
I love that. But
I agree with what you're saying. You have to experience it for yourself. You can't just listen to what we're saying and be like, I don't know. It's definitely something that you have to go through yourself.
I think that's a big difference between some of Eastern traditions like Buddhism and some parts of Hinduism versus Christianity, for example, or other theistic religions, which is in theism, you're kind of asked to take it on faith that whatever, there is a God in whichever, whether you're talking about Islam or Christianity or Judaism, it depends, but you kind of need to take it on faith that there is a God. Whereas in something like Buddhism, you really just the proof is in the pudding. You are experiencing it yourself. The only things that you need to believe is that there is suffering and there is an end to suffering, and the path to ending suffering is the Eightfold Path. And you kind of in a lot of the retreats I'm on, they even say if your suffering isn't ending, then you don't do this. Only take it as long as it's serving you, which I think is pretty interesting. And you can definitely, I've noticed at least for sure that the proof is in the pudding. Yeah. You feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. Yeah. And it's just the beginning. It seems for you, right? And kind of for me too. And it just makes me love life even so much more.
Yeah.
You know, like I've been driving my car since I've been back in Austin, and I'm just like, I gotta drive more carefully. I should put 2 hands on the wheel instead of one, which is great. Like I love life more.
Yeah.
Now. Like I look forward to life much more now.
You can see the beauty and the perfection in any moment. You can see that it's just unfolding.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's really cool to see it unfolding.
So I'm very excited for you to step into your first ayahuasca retreat. And I was wondering if it was a buildup or if there was any like specific moment that really kind of just said, yep, I feel called to engage with this teacher.
There were a couple different times where I was talking about ayahuasca and then I like would see a snake like an hour later.
Yeah.
So that was one. But no, man, it's been something that has been on my mind and that I've heard about. A lot of friends have done. I've been super curious about it, but I've also just had like fear or uncertainty. It hasn't called to me. And then I would say it first like called to me during a breathwork session, just randomly. I was kind of, doing breathwork without any psychedelics or anything. And I just saw this like kind of vision of like grandmother Aya like reaching out to me, basically beckoning me. And I've heard from people that I've talked to that when you feel the call, it's kind of like a telephone. Like once it starts ringing, it doesn't stop until you pick up the phone. So that was probably, I don't know, like a year and a half ago. And yeah, since then there's just been like, I met the right shamans and I met the right, people that want to do it as well. And so it's just been kind of a slow build and something where I feel like I wanted to be in the right place to kind of receive the wisdom of it and be in the right mental space of it. And it feels like I am.
It's aligning into your life.
Yeah.
Something that comes to my mind is when I got back, local pastures.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can just pick up like certain things that you like on a daily basis. It's like the small little truck that you can get different livestock and stuff you can find at a farmer's market.
Yeah.
And there's a gentleman there that was working there and I've seen him many times. And he's just super down to earth, super chill. And every time I see him and I buy my, bone broth or whatever, meat, we're just, on the same frequency. But I came back the first time I went to local pastures. I see him again. I was like, "What's up, man?" Blah, blah, blah. And he just kind of says, "What's up? How you been?" And I told him, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm just getting back from Costa Rica." And I find out that him and his brother do integration practices.
Wow.
Like he just tells me this.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh. And granted, I'm not really doing anything within his line of business quite yet, but I now found this kind of like organically, just like, oh, you do stuff to help people with integration. And integration seems to be like, it's not even an option, what I've heard. Like you should definitely find some time and I've done it kind of in my own way, in like my own rough way.
Yeah.
But it's definitely important. Like once you go through the experience, you should try to integrate smoothly. And so this guy, just like randomly was like, I didn't even ask for it. And he was just like, I do this. And I was like, just picking up food. Right.
I mean, I'm believing more and more that there are no coincidences. There just aren't.
A part of me just more and more of these synchronicities occur. And it's like the more that I become present, like through meditation, through breath work, just like different lifestyle practices and whatnot, it's like these things keep happening.
The thing that I'm curious about, and it almost doesn't matter, but the thing I'm wondering is that like, were these things always happening and I just was not tuned in enough to notice? Or is it truly that I am in such harmony that that like the universe is now flowing with me? I mean, it doesn't matter because it's here and it's happening and it's beautiful, but I don't know. I don't know.
I've asked that same thing. And I wonder if it's like, your mind is just so like just in chaos maybe previously. And these things just presented themselves, but you didn't have the awareness to see it.
Yeah.
Maybe, or I don't know. Like I was saying, there's an actual scientific measurement, like a metric that we can break down and explain to people in words that shows, there are different brain waves, frequencies, vibrations. If you get into a certain, state of mind.
Yeah.
And when that happens, there's different like vibrations, like actual vibrations, right? And there's this lesson that I learned right at the end of the retreat. There's this wooden plate and 2 metal poles, right? And so the gentleman there, like, it was just a lesson to show, like, he essentially banged one of the metal springs or poles, and he showed how, like, the one next to it, even though they're like not connected by, they were connected by this wooden plate, it shows how vibrations just will, spread to another material, and how vibrations, frequencies are really everything, right? Yeah. Like, just me talking to you, the vibration of my voice, and there's just more that we even can wrap our heads around. Yeah. And so that happens with different states of mind. And so when you get into that different frequency, it's almost as if things can come into your life in a different way, which is like, whoa. Yeah. If I sit on the couch every day and meditate for an hour and I'm very intentional about it, my life can radically change in a way that sounds like it's a fucking fairy tale. Yeah. So it seems to be occurring for you and somewhat for me, and for other people, not just the 2 of us. I mean, it's for many, many other people that you can hear testimonials through Joe Dispenza, and this is just the beginning of kind of this more through the internet, more awareness through like society to be able to recognize this, which is like awesome. And then it also makes me wonder, like, oh, why are governments becoming more controlling? Huh. Yeah. And like consciousness is becoming more expanding. Huh. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting timing.
Yeah. I mean, you could, I left Twitter a few months ago. I
good for you.
I took a break.
I might actually as well.
That's amazing.
I'm almost fucking,
it feels so good.
I'm there for the podcast. Yeah. But man, like, fuck Twitter now. I'm like, I came back and I told Jay I unfollowed 200 plus people.
Oh, nice.
And then also I'm just like, still, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
I can maybe subscribe to people that I genuinely retain good information about Bitcoin that can educate me. But besides that, like, this has been, now it's not really serving me anymore. It did. Yes. It definitely did.
Yes.
Twitter was very helpful to orange pill me, whatever you want to call it, Bitcoin. Yeah. Help me with like developing my knowledge with Bitcoin. But now it's like, I can't control the negativity that like comes in my feed.
Yeah.
And Instagram's a little bit better right now. And I also use it for my podcast. And I really want to just batch the way that I like market the podcast. Just be like, all right, here's all the content, ship it on these times, these dates, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then like, if I want to think about a specific piece of content from someone like Aubrey Marcus or whoever, I'll just go to their profile.
Yeah.
I don't even want to scroll because the algorithm is just so fucking random.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I came back from this retreat and the first thing I fucking saw was, we're on the brink of World War III. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Yeah. And not to say that they're wrong.
Yeah.
We've got a major war between Russia and Ukraine and we're funding Ukraine.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want to see that after like the experience I just went through.
And what can you do about it? What value is it for you to have that information in that context when you're like looking at your phone? I mean, maybe there's stuff to do.
I mean, he's kind of like it's Tim Kennedy. He's like, he's helping people become more aware of it and trying to be like, you can prep too. Like, you can help with your family, be supportive within your community to help, like, if shit does hit the fan.
Yeah.
You can help the people around you instead of, kind of going into this fearful state and there's a chaos in your society. Yeah. There's more of this just like harmony of helping others in a state of like, oh my God, instead of like trying to kill each other, So, and I think Tim Kennedy, the way that he portrays certain things, like he serves a purpose, like, but it was just the frequency of seeing that coming back from Costa Rica. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to see that right now. And maybe I will eventually. Not to say that I have Bitcoiner friends that are like preppers. Yeah, they stack Bitcoin and they stack guns, and they want to do like their own permaculture or farming and whatnot. And so I respect it because there's been a lot of chaos going on. So, but like Twitter, man, getting off Twitter was a smart move.
I mean, similar to you, it was amazing to me. I made a lot of good friends, including a lot of amazing Bitcoin connections. was really helpful from a career perspective, but it just kind of, it stopped serving me.
Yeah.
And it was like the negativity and just like that anxiety was just too much. So I stopped in January 1st. I mean, I've logged in maybe a couple times since then, but by and large, I've been off. It's been amazing. Mm-hmm. But I did have a tweet a few years ago, I think, where talking about like the government thing, it was like, if you look at how modernity is constructed, it's almost like designed in many ways to like keep people, you know, like addicted, asleep, overweight, helpless, like from everything from whatever, the food, the money, medication, TV and other entertainment, keeping people kind of like, you know, plugged into the current thing and always being reliant on that. It's like, it's almost like society in many ways is constructed so that people never wake up to any of the stuff that we're talking about.
And that's why we're moving to Costa Rica.
That's right. Time to
into the jungles.
Yeah, man.
Well, listen, man, I think we're close to 1 o'clock, and I could probably talk to you for another 2 hours.
Yeah, every conversation we have is a podcast.
Yeah, and here at the Squatch Radio Room, we've got another podcaster coming in, so I want to be respectful to them. I usually ask people where they can find that guest. I don't know if you want to share anything for people to connect with you, or if you just have a message you want to state, feel free to state whatever you like.
I love that. I didn't think about it. You can connect with me, not really on Twitter anymore, but Can't Hardly Wait on Instagram, like the movie Can't Hardly Wait, but my last name is Hardy. A lot of people haven't seen that movie.
I don't think I have.
Oh man, so I'm dating myself. It was like a 90s classic.
Okay, gotcha.
Very good movie about coming of age in high school. Man, a message. I think my message would probably be for anyone that resonated with, you know, my story of feeling like your self-worth is defined by work, or that you feel like, you know, that you kind of have to be someone or do something, to just try surrendering that by 10% and just see what happens when you relax a little bit of that identification.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much, man. And I hope to have you on again.
I would love to.
I would love to have you on again.
Yeah, dude.
This was a great conversation.
Beautiful.
But yeah, thanks, man.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Peace out, everybody.
Peace.